Welcome to Crop Scout School, everyone. As Warren said, I'm Angie. I'm the Extension Field Agronomist for 9 counties in north central Iowa. And my goal today is to give you some basic introductory comments, tips, and tricks, and really why we serve as Crop Scouts, right? What your role could possibly be. Realizing this particular Crop Scout school is designed for new scouts or people with not very many years of experience. So everything I talk about today will be kind of preferenced around that, and we will try and go through some basic beginning introductory materials. You should be able to see a poll question on your screen. So please take an opportunity to answer that question, right? We really just want to get a sense of what your experience is. Okay, with that being said, let's get started. Okay, you have my contact information? This is going to be interesting. So our ultimate goal as a crop scout is to improve producer profits by being a part of the crop production and protection team. Usually as an introductory scout hired maybe for the summer as an internship. Our goal is we're working with maybe a senior agronomist at a retail outlet or for a crop consulting firm or maybe a seed dealer or in other capacity. So part of that team is the producer or the farmer, the employer's agronomist. So your employer's agronomist, whatever company you might be working for, representative of those various input firms, including the seed dealer, the chemical dealer, maybe the crop insurance agent, right? There's all kinds of people that are representatives and participate in crop scouting and crop production in Iowa. And then, of course, you as the crop scout. So our goal of that crop production and protection team is we want to use our best judgment based on economics, based on science, to make in-season rescues. For example, the photo I'm showing here is a Roundup drift situation onto a non-Roundup tolerant corn variety. So should we go back in and plant that or not at that particular point in season? So an in-season rescue decision, or perhaps a procedural decision of, do we need to spray a fungicide? Do we need to spray an insecticide? Something that requires decision-making in season. We also look at replanting decisions, and we're going to talk a little bit about that as we go throughout the day. And then we want to make sure we know enough about that farming operation that if that farmer or our client or producer asks us, can we make recommended changes for succeeding seasons? That's very important as well. So we're not just living in the moment of this crop scouting season. We really want to understand the goals of that particular farmer, things that have happened in the past, things they might be trying to transition to, and how best to make recommended changes for the future. Why do we need to scout? Well, scouting helps protect yield, right? That's our whole goal here, is to make sure that that crop is protected, that there are things that if they are happening in the field, like insect pressure, we can make a sound, logical, and economical decision whether we need to treat for insect pressure or not. It helps us recognize what's going on in our field. There are many folks who hire crop consultants that don't actually get a chance to go out and see those fields during the growing season, and they rely on your input to know what's happening out there. It helps us to develop a management plan that can address what we would call curative practices, right? So things to cure or, in this case, rescue what we've already done, or to make preventative plans. So do we need that fungicide application? What has the weather condition been like? What are my hybrids tolerant to a certain disease? What is the disease pressure out there, right? So those all are what we would call like preventative planning. And then finally, crop scouting is based on a lot of economic thresholds for particular pest, whether it's a pathogen or an insect or even weed pressure. So we want to make the best decisions possible based on the research that supports that, and that looks at providing and including an economic basis. So when we look at thresholds for insect pressure, for example, we can tell where the economic impact is based on the threshold of pest activity. So it's important to know all those things. Probably the most important thing we take a look at when we are crop scouting is we kind of need to know what normal versus not normal is, right? If you want to use the word abnormal, that's okay too. But really, what is normal? How does a plant grow? How does it develop? Does it look like it's normal, or is something not normal about that plant, and is there something we can do about that? This particular growing season so far, we've been relatively cool, and you know, a lot of that corn out there right now was kind of yellow tinged anyway before some of the frost we had over this last weekend. Is that normal? Well, under cold conditions, it is usually normal. But if hadn't had cold or dry conditions this spring, what would we anticipate that corn to look like at its particular growth stage? So when we're looking at plants, we want to look above ground. We want to look below ground. So it's important we dig up seedlings, seeds, plants, and we look above and below ground. And then sometimes we want to cut those plants open, right? We want to be able to cut open a corn plant to stage it. We want to cut it open to see about disease. There are insect feeding. There's all kinds of reasons we want to be able to do that. So we want to make sure that we're looking in all three situations, right? Above ground, below ground, and on the inside of that plant. An abnormal plant or not normal plant is not productive, and it tends to communicate in several ways that are most noticeable to us as crop scouts. That would be color, that would be growth, whether it's growing normally or not. And then finally, I mean, by the time we get to yield, right, it's a little late, but we can retrospectively look at yield and say what didn't go right out there, or what was in my control that I could have managed throughout that growing season. There are a lot of things obviously outside of our control. So once again, when we're looking at plants, I just wanted to give you an idea of some normal, not normal. In this case, none of these are normal. You should be seeing 3 photos of corn. These corn plants were all relatively at about the same stage. The first photo that you see, where you can see the actual feet in the shoes in the photo, is frosted corn, right? We are seeing a lot of that right now after this last weekend. That corn is not dead, but it looks dead. And in this case, the decision in this field was, do I rip this up and replant the field? In reality, the idea was we needed to wait a few days to make a decision. And that corn actually was still alive. The growing point was below the ground, and we needed a few days to see how that corn would come out of that frost situation. The center photo, where you can see the purple leaf on the corn, this was a cold, dry spring, and that purple leaf is a short-term phosphorus deficiency. So I don't want to go through the exact issues with each of these pictures, but what I want to tell you is, right, these are not normal. And then finally, if we look at the right-hand picture, you can kind of see that silver blade. That's also frost injury on that corn plant. That leaf tissue has separated. It looks silver. Probably not as severe of damage as the first picture with the frost or freeze damage. So just to get a sense of what you're seeing out there, what's normal and what's not normal. And I probably should have put in a picture of normal for that growth stage, right? Once again, we want to look inside the plants. You can see I have a photo of a split corn stalk there. In this particular case, I was using that to stage this plant because we've lost some of the lower leaves. And so I use my hawkbill knife, and we'll talk about that as we go today, to be able to cut open that plant safely and take a look at what's, just to stage my plant. And I think Mark Licht is going to cover a little bit of this as we go today. And then the other photo is a picture of my colleague Megan holding on to 2 corn plants out of the same cornfield. I believe this was last spring, And basically what we see is we see a difference in rooting development based on herbicide injury from carryover from the previous year. So the plant on the right has some purpling leaves. It was a little bit shorter. You can see that the root development is a little stunted. We have some what we call bottle brushing on the roots, and versus the other plant, which is more normal for that growth stage, a lot more root development. So once again, it's important to look below ground as well. When to look for what is very important, right? So we are spending some time today talking about crop growth stage and development. We want to look at that all the way from planting through maturity or harvest. We are able to get a good sense of what that plant should be looking like or actually doing based on the crop growth stage. So Mark is going to cover a lot of that today, but it's very important to understand if you've planted corn, as an example, recently, how many growing degree days does it take to get that seedling out of the ground? How many growing degree days until we get to tasseling? How many growing degree days till we get to maturity after pollination? All of these things are important to know, and it's helpful to be able to go out in that field and say, hey, I know this field was planted on this day. We've had about this many growing degree days. I think the corn should be popping through that soil surface anytime now, right? So it's important to have some of that data when you start your scouting process. So you need to talk to the farmer or your client and be able to know those kinds of things. Pest biology is very important. We have a lot of overwintering pests in Iowa, such as bean leaf beetles, and then we have a lot of migrating insects such as cutworms, true armyworms, and so we need to know, are they here over winter? When will they show up? If they're migrating, how do we know when they've arrived in Iowa? How much heat does it take for that particular insect to go through its life cycle, and when does it become a problem to our crops? One of the best ways to do that is follow along on our integrated crop management webpage at Iowa State University. We just put out a scouting advisory for black cutworms earlier this week. So if you're not following the ICM webpage, you can sign up to get the news releases. That's a great place to go find that information in Iowa, and I know a lot of other states do very similar things. We kind of want to know growing degree days. We want to know what the previous crop was. We want to know what the weather impact is on disease development, and then obviously weather. Weather is a huge impact on growing and development. So we want to know, what have the weather conditions been? Why does my corn look like it's yellow right now, or it is yellow, right? Is it because it's been cold and dry? Is it because it's something else, nitrogen deficiency? We need to understand what all is happening out there, and weather plays a huge role. How to scout, right? That's why you're here today. So we have some basic guidelines on how to scout. And the first thing we want to do when we go out to that field, right, we want to be able to talk to our client, our farmer, our employer. We need to be able to find that field, and that's a whole discussion we do in our live scout school that we can't do today. But we want to, once we get to the field, we want to have a game plan, right? We don't want to wander around willy-nilly, so to speak. Even myself, after doing this for 30-some years, sometimes I find myself distracted in the field, right? I've got things on my mind. I'm not really paying attention. So I want to get to that field. I want to have a game plan when I'm out there. And one of those things I want to do is I want to decide how I'm going to move through that field, right? I can draw a transect. I can do a zigzag pattern, something that helps me stay focused and keep on track for what I'm doing. Maybe I do a diamond pattern, right? A W, anything where you're out there, you have a predetermined path, so to speak. You're walking so many feet. When the crops are small like they are right now, I literally throw my trowel and walk that direction, right? And I keep doing that in kind of a zigzag pattern back and forth across that field. If fields are really big, right, if you have a 160-acre field you're looking at, you can't just walk in from the field driveway and look at the headlands. You need to be able to get out in that field, because things are going to be impacted by soils, they're going to be impacted by drainage, they may be impacted by previous patterns out in that field from tillage equipment or fertilizer application. So we want to be able to look not only from the road, we want to be able to get out in that field. So once again, come with a predetermined plan, right? A plan that helps you stay focused. If it's a really large field, you may want to divide it into chunks, right, to help keep yourself focused. And then obviously we want to scout things independently or different if there are different genetics out there. So if half the field is planted to one hybrid, even if the planter is split, we want to make sure we're looking at both those hybrids. We want to know the history of that field. Really importantly, and we still see this in this day and age, you'll see where there were old barns or feedlots, right? The nutrient concentration in that soil is still pretty high. You may see darker crops, right? Darker colored crops because of the nutrients in the field. So it pays to have some of that history and ask those questions when you meet with your client. How to scout, right? One of the next things we want to look at is looking for man-made patterns versus randomly distributed areas of concern. Man-made patterns tend to work in lines. They tend to follow the width of the equipment, whether it's the tillage path, whether it's the width of the sprayer boom, whether it's the width of the planter. Those are what we would call man-made concerns. So in this photo, for example, you can see a whole bunch of yellow soybeans. You can see a green strip of soybeans through the field in the background, what I'd call normal versus the not normal in the yellow stunted soybeans. In the front area, you can see a round patch. So in this particular case, the green strip out in the middle of the field is simply where the sprayer did not spray, right? There was a sprayer gap in this case. This was the case of the wrong herbicide product sprayed on the field. Obviously, something that beans are not tolerant of. So we can see that pattern. We can see that it's the same number of rows. It's the entire length of the field. If we look at that front area, the oval area there's a couple of things. Really, if we were going to look at what we'd call abiotic or non-pest management, it'd be more related to maybe pathogens in this case, a small circular area where we might see some seedling diseases. Abiotic things biotic things tend to be more circular in nature, small patches scattered throughout the field, not necessarily field-wide, and certainly not a specific pattern to them. In this case, that area happened to be a wet spot that the sprayer couldn't get through, so those soybeans were not sprayed, so they're greener, plus you can see all the weeds between the rows, so that gives us an indication of what happened there. But that picture is good for a couple of talking points, right? We also want to know about soils, we want to know about drainage. Once again, I'm going to stress the hybrids difference, and I'm going to show you a picture of that here shortly. Biotic is caused by living things, whether it's a pathogen, whether it's an insect, whether it's weed pressure. Abiotic disorders we would think of as nutrient deficiencies and things along that line. They're not necessarily caused by a living organism, but they still exist in the field. And they may not be man-made, but they certainly can be fixed if it's stuff like nutrient deficiencies. And then we want, again, to be very aware of that field history. Again, just a pattern to show you, right? This was the case where these particular people had used an HPPD inhibitor and didn't get the boom cleaned out on that sprayer. So we can actually see these wedged shaped patterns along this field, where that material that was sprayed previous to a previous crop was coming out once again on the soybeans and not used for use in soybeans. So when we tend to see those wedge-shaped patterns like that in the field, we can usually look at that from a sprayer system and say, something might have been hung up in that boom. So it's kind of good to know what those patterns might mean when you're out there. This is a really nice aerial shot, and I should thank some people for sharing this with me, but this is obviously a split planter decision on hybrids for whatever reason. And what you can see is we have some plant lodging within some of those, within that one hybrid, due to probably rootworm pressure in this case. But this was a nice aerial photo to show that. So you can see in the dark areas within some of those strips is that's where the plants have lodged. So this makes also a great idea. Drones help. That's a great photo, but not everybody has access to a drone. So you got to know how wide that planter was, right? And you can say, wow, every 8 rows, right, I'm seeing this issue, and the next 8 rows, I'm not seeing this issue. So you got to know what's going on. Finally, I kind of want to focus a little bit on scouting gear. This is really important to be well equipped when you go to the field. And I'm not suggesting you have to carry all this stuff in the field with you, but you need to have access to it. So it's in your car or in your truck or whatever the case may be. Sweep nets, a trowel or a spade, a soil probe, a hand lens for looking at very small things, pocket knives, a tape measure, and some kind of stake to hold the tape measure in the ground as you're doing stand counts. Water for washing roots, for root development or assessing rootworm damage. Buckets come in handy. If you need to get samples to the lab and you want to keep them cool, right, not bad to throw in a cooler and stop and pick up some ice if you need to somewhere. Paper towels, plastic bags or soil sampling bags, paper bags for plant samples, vials for insects, and then if you want to preload your vials with some rubbing alcohol to preserve those insects, if you need to take them back and have the boss look at them, or you want to send them into like the plant disease diagnostic lab at Iowa State, those are all good options to have. Permanent markers that you can write on stakes or flags that you can come back and track something. I have a bunch of flags in a field right now, right? I want to track some soybeans that got frosted to see if they're going to survive. Phone, you can carry a nice camera, but our phone cameras in this day and age do a great job. They also provide us GPS coordinates. You can use a nicer camera if you want. Make sure you have an extra phone charger along, right? If you're like me and you take a lot of photos and do a lot of traveling during the day, the phone at some point tries to go dead. And then a first aid kit, because safety is priority, and there's a lot of things that can happen out there in the field, and especially if you're out there by yourself. So I wanted to show you some examples of my favorite gear. If we were at field right now and we were doing this live in person, I'd be dragging you through the back of my car to show you what was all in there. I like a flat bottom spade. I actually have a sharpshooter spade with a rounded edge, and I have my flat bottom spade. Flat bottom spades are awesome, okay? First of all, you can stick that spade 3 or 4 inches from that furrow, and press it in the ground and lean back, and you can get that furrow to pop wide open if it's not too wet, right? And you can get a look at planting depth, you can get a look at germination, you can get a look at seed spacing, if stuff's not above the ground yet. It can tell you all kinds of things, right? And it gives you a good idea of looking at root development as well. So I like my flat bottom spade. I'm going to flat out tell you, a spade is also a safety tool, right? Because once in a while you might run into something in that field that you don't really want to deal with. So I won't go into details, but let's just say we all have some experiences with some wildlife we'd prefer not to talk about. In the other picture, I have a trowel. You can see my little glass vial I have for insects. I have a seed digger, right? That's my Iowa State seed digger, so I can look at seedling depth. I can measure other things as necessary. I have a hand lens. I have some bags to collect samples or soil samples, flags to mark plants or areas I want to come back and look at. My hawkbill knife for cutting open stalks. They're really pretty sharp, so be careful. And then I have a tape measure, right? Sometimes I want to measure off things. I want to do stand counts, all indispensable items when you're out there as a crop scout. Actually, wrong title, but here's a close-up of some of those same tools, right, just to give you a closer view of that. And then I want to talk about safety is a priority for you. If you're out in the field by yourself, there are a lot of things that can go wrong. Not that we wish that upon anybody, but in reality, it's hot, it's humid, it's cold, it's wet, it's whatever, right? So protect yourself from the sun, wear your sunscreen, wear your chapstick with SPF in that so you don't sunburn your lips. Drink plenty of water, wear a hat, maybe you're wearing long sleeves. Be very conscious of the fact of if the farmer has treated that field for anything, so you know what the restricted entry interval is, and basically that means if that field has been sprayed with some sort of pesticide and the label requires or has a restricted entry interval, you really should not and can't go back into that field until that restricted entry interval passes. So be in communication with your client about that, right? Be safe, reduce your pesticide exposure in that particular case. Have your phone with you all the time. It's not unlikely that you could step in a hole, animal hole, twist an ankle, break a leg. It does happen, right? So have your phone with you. Maybe you work out a plan with your boss or someone that they're tracking your phone so they know your location. I know that seems kind of creepy in this day and age, but honestly, you never know what might happen out there. If it's going to be lightning, we have severe weather roll in, keep an eye on the sky and realize lightning can hit a long distance from where those storms actually are. So please be very careful about that. Get yourself out of the field. If you find yourself stuck in the field during a thunderstorm and lots of lightning, get yourself as low to the ground as possible, right? Don't be carrying your sweep net or your trowel or your spade. Put everything on the ground and get yourself as low to the ground as possible. And be safe, because sometimes, as we all know, they just pop up out of nowhere. Reference material, and we will have all this stuff available for you to access online or order as you need, but always carry your reference materials with you. There's lots of books. Iowa State has a whole series of the crop books, like the corn and soybean guide, the wheat guide. There's all kinds of things out there that are pocket size. You can stick in your back pocket and carry around with you. There's publications. Work with experienced scouts. It's okay if you don't have the answer. And for a lot of scouts, your job is not to give the answer. Your job is to be the eyes and ears and report back to your supervisor, and then they can make the decision or work with the farmer, right? Remember, this is a team. They can work with that person to make the appropriate decisions going forward in time for treatment or other things that may need to be done. Work with your retail agronomist. They have a lot of experience. Work with us extension agronomists. We're here to help you. There's 11 of us scattered around the state, and we're happy to help out. So don't hesitate to contact us. You can always send in samples to the Plant and Insect Diagnostic Lab at Iowa State. So you're seeing stuff on soybean leaves and you're not sure if it's a disease, you're not sure if it's herbicide injury, if it is a disease, you're not sure really which one. You can send samples into the lab at Iowa State. There's a fee for doing that, but don't be afraid to submit samples. And that one of the things that does is help us track diseases in the state. Finally, you want to avoid making recommendations unless that is your job to do that, okay? And that's a conversation you need to have when you're first hired. But for most introductory crop scouts, the job is not to make recommendations. The job, once again, is to be the eyes and ears and report back to the retail agronomist or the crop consultant or whomever, or maybe even just the farmer. Don't fake it, right? If you don't know, it's okay. There's a lot of things that go on out there. Even experienced agronomists with many years of experience sometimes don't know what they're seeing, and that's okay, right? We have new things that happen all the time. So don't fake it. Don't give the wrong answer. Don't make things up. Your client will really appreciate it if you say, I'm not really sure. I need to get back to you. And then do make sure you follow up. avoid all that windshield scouting, right? Driving around that quarter section, not necessarily the best way to do it, but it is important to look at the field from a bigger picture view, right? But make sure that you're not just driving by, because I'm just going to flat out tell you, you can miss a lot at 50 miles an hour, and you can miss a lot at 20 miles an hour. So take the time and get through that field. Don't try to save time by not meeting with that farmer or client. It's important to have that relationship, to let them know you've been out there, right? You're going to make a report, whatever the case may be. We all have clients that like to chat. We know that. Sometimes it takes a little extra time, but really this is about being in the people business, no matter what kind of agronomist you are, or seed dealer, or retailer, or any service provider. We are all about people, so take that time to meet with your client. And then avoid skipping or cutting corners, right? Don't wander out just into the headlands and say, man, I'm really pressed on time, I can only look at this. Take your time and make sure you do it the right way. Finally, and I'm right on time, I want to just wrap up and say, here are the 11 field agronomists, extension field agronomists in Iowa. You can see we all have anywhere from probably 9 to 14 counties we cover. Our contact information is there, and we'll make sure we get that to you. But please feel free to call us. We're here to help. We're also here to learn, so it goes both ways. And with that, I'm going to stop sharing my screen. And hopefully, if there's any questions, Megan's going to direct some questions to me. And I appreciate you all joining us today. My screen tells me there's 490 of you out there.
Great job, Angie.
Thank you.
So I have opened up another poll question. So somebody sent us a Q&A that said, what's your opinion or experience on using satellite images to find scouting locations? Is this helpful?
That's a great question. I think that is just one of our many tools, right? That allows us to get a very broad perspective. Depending on what that satellite image is set to do, it may give you some ideas of things or areas to look for in the field, but it's not going to tell you what tiny little insect is out there causing some symptoms on a plant, right? So it's a great way to look at vegetative index, some other things out there, but you still got to get out in that field and look. So great question. Thank you.
And I think you'd probably say the same thing for maybe our UAVs, right? We have a lot of good technology now, but maybe doesn't replace scouting on foot.
Yeah, you're right. There's a lot of great technology out there. I'm kind of wishing I would have had a drone when I was much younger. And now that I'm older.
Given the situation that we're in right now here in Iowa and in the United States, there's maybe going to be a lack of some of our opportunity to have that personal one-on-one interaction and actually shake our clientele's hands and feel like we can have that kind of bond maybe with them. So do you have any suggestions for our scouts to try and create that relationship or make sure that they're maintaining their relationships without maybe the physical interaction that we're used to?
Yes, that's a good point. If we were in our live scout school, one of the exercises we do is actually teach people how to shake hands, right? In this day and age, not everybody knows how to shake a hand, right? If I stick my hand out to you, right, like this, some people don't respond because they don't really know what that means. But in this day and age right now, I think there's some really good ways to keep that contact with people. First of all, make sure you understand if they want you to come and stop by the house or not. And keep your 6 feet or 10 feet away if that's the case, nonetheless. We don't need to be shaking hands in this day and age. But my advice is take your sunglasses off, right? Look them in the eye. Let them know that you're here to listen to them. Answer their questions. Maybe call or check in or text or email or whatever they prefer for communication. And face-to-face communication, and just constantly keep in contact with people right now. I think that's the most important thing we can do. So, and be safe out there, right? Respect your safety and your personal preference and theirs as well in terms of how much interaction they are comfortable with.
Thanks, Angie.
Great. I see there's a question about whether or not you can have a copy of the PowerPoint. I'll work with Brent and Warren to make sure you can have these. But if you have my email address, amrieck, so AMRIECK @iastate.edu. If you drop me a note, I will be happy to send them to you. Thank you all.